Let this be our prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be found acceptable, our rock and our Redeemer. Let the people of God say, amen. Micah in 6 and 8 asks the question, what does the Lord require of you? Now we know that asking good questions is the pathway to deeper understanding. But I must admit that this question, it poses a bit of a problem for me. Maybe it's in the framing. Because I don't know about you, but I personally have had enough of the type of religion that is obsessed with rules and regulations and requirements. Sick of being told you must do this and you must do that. That type of religion is not the type of religion that I want to hang my hat on, because by all means we know how that story ends. With proclamations and pronouncements over our lives and our bodies and commandments that discipline who we are and take us away from the fundamental truth that we are created in the image of the one who loves us into freedom. Being told what to do. Now, if you've ever seen the 1989 film whose theme is Bill Withers' classic song, "Sometimes in our lives we all have pain, we all have sorrows, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you okay, keep going. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long that I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Lean on me. All right, put your hands together, bud. Right, y'all were with me, and I'm happy about it. Right, and you remember, right, Lean on Me, that 1989 classic, the film, where that unconventional principal, Joe Clark, when told that he's got to do something, responds with a phrase from Langston Hughes' poem, Necessity. I don't have to do nothing but stay black and die. In other words, I don't have to do anything but remain who I am and who I'm created to be, a beloved child of God. And we can lean on that promise. What does the Lord require of us? I, for one, think I've got a couple witnesses in this place. We're skeptical of the type of religion that anchors itself in requirements, because too many religious folk have been so darn hypocritical down through the years, right? They do this from the pulpit and then they go live a different way, all while pronouncing things over people where they had no intention of following it themselves. But now we live in the age of consent. So any stench of compulsion smells of rotting flesh from yesterday when bodies were forced to conform and behave to their choice. Such commandments sound like pronouncements from a bygone era that have no place in a world where the common mantra rings, I'm spiritual, not religious. Interesting thing that just before verse 8, the prophet Micah asks in verses
6 and 7 of chapter 6, he asks a question that helps us to unpack and to delve deeper. He asks, with what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before the Lord and with burnt offerings and calves a year old? Will the Lord be blessed with 1,000 of rams, with 10,000 of rams, with 10,000 of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? In other words, he asks, how shall I practice my religion? How shall I practice my faith? What form of religion does God ask of us? And I need you to hear me that God does not answer these important questions with pronouncements, give me sacrifices, or give me endless offerings. God does not respond by saying, give me your thoughts and prayers, getting all dressed up with form and fashion. Rather, you see, the prophecy of Micah does not contain a list of things to do and not to do. The religion that the prophet Micah envisions is not one of commandments and compulsory action. There is no litany of rules and regulations, only one single requirement. What does the Lord require of us? But to seek justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with our God. Lawrence Stuckey writes in This Day, a Wesleyan way of prayer. It's a group of disciplines that has helped guide my spiritual life for at least the last decade or so. He writes in this text, which I commend to you in day 6, about this requirement. He says this: the most famous words from Micah at first read like a list of 3 things. Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with God, but it is not so. Justice and mercy cannot be separated, at least as God defines them. Justice without mercy is harshly legalistic, even cruel. And mercy without justice sacrifices fairness on the altar of sentimentality. To the question, is God just or kind, the only proper answer is both. Furthermore, humility before God consists of imitating this justice, mercy of God. Humility is our response to divine love toward us and our witness to the power God's love can release in others. Therefore, what Micah sets forth is one thing, not a list of 3. Even though we would probably be happier with 3, then we could keep our little lists and check each item off in turn, like a laundry list going to the grocery store. But it cannot be. Hence, we are constrained to ask, if I seek justice for myself, how can I understand when others extend mercy to those who have hurt me? Can I myself show mercy? If I am merciful to others, can I understand why those who have been hurt think I have no concern for fairness? How does all of this relate to Christian teaching about forgiving others in love, as a loving God has forgiven us? Such profound and important questions that might continue to guide our inquiry in this place. So, beloved, I need you to know I'm not a New Englander by birth. Those born in Maine would say that I'm from away. Though my story is not rooted in Boston, this is now very much my home, Roxbury to be exact. A little condo on Fort Hill where the tower that defines the landscape is comprised of the same Roxbury pudding stone that our tower steeple is made of in this place. The section of the city, Roxbury, once its own town, is named due to the rocky terrain that made agriculture difficult in the early days of the nation. Some of you might know what it means to have a life that sometimes has unkind terrain to try to grow and flourish, and all around you is but rocky soil. That Langston Hughes, indeed, CJ, that life ain't been no crystal stair. Sometimes it got tacks on it, and torn up boards and pieces. Right? So sometimes the life that we live, the soil that we try to cultivate in, has rocks strewn all through them. And sometimes the road of our life, it gets rocky indeed. And what we are inviting ourselves into as we follow our faith and that we gather in this place called Union is to reorient our view that allows those rough paths to become a little bit smoother, such that those stumbling blocks might become our stepping stones. And those places that are hard might become the foundation to build a tower that reaches to the place where God desires us to flourish. A hymn writer said it this way: "On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is on Christ, the solid rock we stand. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' love and righteousness. Although I'm not from here, but now have made my home in Roxbury, that place where rocky stones were turned into places where one might cultivate and grow." One of the things that you quickly realize about here in New England is that the meeting house is unique to the religious landscape in New England. Right? The first African meeting house on Beacon Hill, Old South Meeting House in downtown Crossing, the Charles Street Meeting House, which first housed Charles Street AME, which is now in Grove Hall. Our Old West Church is fashioned after the simple meeting house style. And right here at Union, before we move to the South End and purchase this great high Victorian Gothic revival stone sanctuary with Roxbury pudding stone, our first church on Beacon Hill was the Revere Street Meeting House, a humble wooden structure. Unlike the country churches in Old England in Europe, our New England churches were built with intention. They were built with intention of being intersectional spaces where people gathered, where the meeting house would be at once a house of prayer and also a community center that responded to the deepest needs of the communities at that time. Because by all means, religion was never intended to concern itself simply with private matters. As Methodism's founder famously said, there is no holiness but social holiness. There is no religion but social religion. So there's something about these humble buildings, these meeting houses, that illuminate our value of intersectional justice, that the meeting house would be a simple church where simply we come to meet up, to gather, to meet up to do God's work together. We come from all walks of lives, and we meet up here in this house of prayer for all people, and we fashion it as our church home where all are welcome, all are seen, all are valued, and we might equip ourselves for the work of transforming the world around us. Now, let me be clear, beloved. Intersectional justice does not explicitly appear anywhere in the Bible in the ways that other values do, like unconditional love, compassionate service, transformative worship. Although grounded in the ancient principles of Micah 6:8, the term intersectional justice is what one might call a modern word. You know, one of those $50 words that sound fancier than they actually are. That when you might say intersectional justice as you're having some wine, gin, and tonic, right, at a cocktail party, it might impress somebody. But really, intersectional justice is just a compound word that pulls together intersectionality and justice. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw invented the term intersectionality to describe the unique experiences of black women in America, who, though being both black and women, did not benefit from the same privileges of black men and white women. This is to say, they did not experience patriarchy in the same way that white women did, and they did not experience institutional racism in the same way that black men did, such that they experienced kind of a double form. They stood at what she said, a dangerous intersection where patriarchy and racism collide and meet, all the while still standing invisible by white women and black men who thought their concerns, their needs were cared for within the whole. In our pursuit of justice then here at Union, we choose to stand at this particularly dangerous intersection where the most marginalized, the most underserved, and the most disadvantaged have been forced by the systems that have constructed our world. There we stand. We choose to be in radical solidarity with those who have been rendered invisible, those who have been left out, those have been pressed to the margins, and we call them into the center, where we see and honor and celebrate their stories and their experiences. At the crossroads, at the intersection, at the cross is where our religious vision imagines another world, where we envision a just world as a justice-seeking people, that we are connected in the pursuit of this just world because justice is God's plan for our world, a world where everyone has exactly what they need in order to flourish. And the way to this just world is love. And the only way that we will get to justice through love is for us to come together and choose each other and meet in this place. Yes, we may have different histories, but difference does not have to necessitate separation. Different histories, yes, but a future that is intertwined and interwoven when we choose one another, when we choose to be family together. At Union, you are family. When we say that you are a child of God, I am a child of God, so let's journey together to a place where all of God's children might flourish. And we stand in radical solidarity with one another, loving our neighbors as ourselves. And this is how we create this just new world out of the unjust one that has been given to us. You see, injustice and oppression are experienced differently. And depending on our bodies and social locations and experiences, we experience injustice to varying degrees. So intersectional justice does not erase the uniqueness of who we are, but rather it says, let us orient ourselves toward those who have been most affected, most marginalized by structural oppressions that shape how we experience the world. And racism and sexism and homophobia and classism and ableism and ageism and all the isms, they spring from the same well of injustice. That these isms, they too are connected and intersecting and grounded in the classic tale of the haves and the have-nots, whereby throughout all of history, there have been winners and losers. But intersectional justice says this: if the oppressions and isms are connected, then there is only one way for us to topple them. And we topple them by coming together and uniting across colors and creeds and classes. And we declare today, we declare together that enough is enough. and that there is a better way, there is a more excellent way, there is a safer way where no one is forced to live perpetually at the dangerous intersection. And together, we can build this new way. Even though church has been an agent of injustice, through community and being connected to one another, we have the ability to rewrite the story about that which has even shaped us. That we get to be a church that sees the marginalized and seeks justice and fashions it out of this unjust world, declaring that it does not have to be this way, and I'm going to be part of the solution and not the problem. As our praise team comes, during this year of possibility, the just world might seem like an impossibility, that it's beyond our reach, that the structural oppressions, that the injustices just run so deep that we just throw up our hands and give up. But still, there is something about who we are and whose we are that calls us, that compels us, that invites us to anchor ourselves in the firm foundation that says yes, in the words of Ephesians, that God can do exceedingly and abundantly beyond anything we can ask or imagine. That God can, through us, change this world and create a more just world if we continue to pursue it. So if you agree with that prayer, and if you agree with the song that God is more than able, why don't you put your hands together and bless God on this day.